check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. All right, so right now we are at minute number 130 or so. We will start at exactly 3 minutes, so 1 minute and 30 seconds from now. All right, so 3 minutes into the stream, we'll give it about 30 more seconds and we'll start from there. 20 seconds and counting. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so check this out. UFC 324, we have Gaethje announced to take on Paddy Pimblett. Now, that is going to be for the Interim Championship at 155. Now, what is significant about that? I'll tell you what's significant about that is, Illa Topuria is still the Undisputed Champion. Now, as such, of being the Undisputed Champion, uh, well, he's sort of taken some time off for personal reasons. Now, we don't exactly know what that is. We can sort of speculate. I will give you a bit of a clue on that. Maybe it had something to do with the Nelk boys. And for those that know, they know. And for those that don't know, well, maybe you're not a hardcore fan enough to understand. But nonetheless, that is the official story of Illa Topuria and why he is not able to, as he says, defend his title within the quarter of this year. So what exactly does that mean now for Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett? Well, now we got an interim championship. So that means that the winner is going to face Illa Topuria. But here's the thing about that, right? Here's the thing about that. Oh, Nightmare says, "What's up?" 400 says, "What's up? How you guys doing?" So here's the thing about that, okay? There's not a guarantee that the winner of Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett are going to be facing the winner. I'm sorry, the winner of that is going to be facing Illa Topuria. Yes, he is the winner, obviously, of that weight class. He's the double champion, the reigning 155 champion. But speaking of 145, in the same similar fashion that he had to vacate that, Volkanovski is also set to fight Diego Lopez for the second time. Okay, and why is that significant? Well, I got to tell you, man, the first fight around, look, close, maybe, maybe not. I mean, obviously, Volkanovski is the 145 GOAT for a reason, right? But do we really need a rematch? Or is it just one of those situations where, you know what, maybe they just couldn't find anybody else, right? That whole entire fight, the striking percentage was on the higher side for Volkanovski, right? He just has the higher volume, at least in that fight, in comparison to Diego Lopez. Now, what is it going to look like for this second fight around? Now, look, no two fights are ever the same, okay? They are never the same. And, well, for one, how one fight starts in one side of let's say a year, that rematch is going to look completely different sometime around when, let's say, they face other people. That's just the reality of the sport in and of itself. So, okay, how is this Volkanovski and Lopez fight going to play out? Well, look, it could play out a few ways, right? Don't be surprised if Diego Lopez pulls off a finish. Okay. What is that question mark for? Question mark. Are you questioning that Diego Lopez is actually fighting Volkanovski next? Yes, I couldn't believe it, but that is what they are going to do, and that is their rematch from UFC 314 Miami. So let's see here. Other announcements they have going on, right? They got Sean O'Malley taking on Song Yadong. And then they have Waldo Cortez Acosta, by the way, coming back. Like, what is it now? Maybe his fourth fight of the year, right? Taking on Derek Lewis. Okay, now that's an interesting matchup, right? Because at any time, those guys can literally knock each other out at any given moment, right? They can literally knock each other out. And, well, quite frankly, to be honest with you, Waldo Acosta seems like a much more well-rounded fighter, maybe a lot more athletic, and meaning in a sense that he can be a lot more dynamic on the feet with better footwork. Whereas with, as you know, Derek Lewis is a knockout artist, but essentially has is a bit of a plotty type of fighter, right? Doesn't really move his feet or anything like that. He just waits for the big shot. But Waldo, to be honest with you, has the better wrestling, and we've seen plenty of fights where Derek Lewis was manhandled on the wrestling side of things, right? Now, would that be the same effect for this fight? Well, I got to be honest with you. I would say so, right? I think that this fight would probably be dependent upon the wrestling of Waldo, because Derek Lewis is going to do exactly what Derek Lewis is going to do. And what exactly is that? Well, he's going to load up a big shot. He's going to wait to swing at you, and he's going to use his power to take you out, right? And then if that doesn't go that way, then it's either he gets knocked out or he, vehemently knocks somebody out. He just has that kind of power to do so. Other matchups that are announced, how about this? Arnold Allen taking on John Silva. Okay, and then you have Omar Nurmagomedov taking on the former 125 champion who moved up in bantamweight. By the way, is doing very good at bantamweight, Davison Figueroa. And then, of course, you got Alex Grasso taking on Rose Namajunas. No one really cares. But yeah, I mean, really, honestly, it's one of those fights where you have, the new age taking on the old school, and you know how those types of situations go. So the Volkanovski fight, okay, is confirmed for UFC 325, okay, and that is going to set and take place in Sydney, Australia, okay. Well, there you go. That kind of explains everything right there. What do I mean by that? Well, think about it. Sydney, Australia, Volkanovski. It's an obvious choice that they have to, that they have to make, right? How are you going to have a non-Australian headline the fight? Right now, has that happened before? Now, look, when they had Izzy fight Sean Strickland, it was a New Zealander that's headlining that, which is Izzy, right? And then you have Sean Strickland, who's not from there, but obviously every time they go there, they have to put somebody on that is from that side of the world, right? So who are they going to put on? Obviously, it's going to be uh, the right choice, which is Volkanovski. He's active. They had a good fight between him and Diego Lopez last time, and I guess the UFC feels like they should do it again. Uh, he says, "Hey, I have to cook Ilya." Huh? What do you mean by that? Alex Bertog. What do you mean by I have to cook Ilya? Are you calling Ilya a turkey? Is that what you are referring to? He says, I'll seriously can't fight in December. Okay. Yes, that is you. Okay. So here's the thing, right? We think that that's what is going on. We think. We don't know. Okay. Yes, that's why I hinted earlier about the Nelk Boys podcast, right? That could be some kind of a reality to his situation as to why he is taking a personal time off, right? But you also got to understand, maybe he's trying to duck Armin Sarukian, okay? Because think about it. Armin Sarukian just had a second round submission in UFC Qatar against Dan Hooker. Now it's easy for them to turn him around. It's easy to turn them around. Well, why? Because, man, look, I don't think he really took damage in that fight. Let's go take a look at the punch stats for that fight right now. Let's see. So, Armin versus Hooker, which was this weekend. Let's see what the punch stats were on that one. Okay, so Dan Hooker only landed like 17. You know what? Here's the thing about punch stats in MMA, right? They're very deceptive. I'm going to tell you why they're very deceptive. Okay. You've seen those little punches that they throw on the ground, those little short punches, like where, you're on the ground and then they're hitting you in the stomach or sometimes even hitting you in the arm. Okay. Like this is considered a strike. Okay. I need you to understand that. So it's very deceptive when somebody says that they landed 17 times on them. Well, how about maybe 12 times on the arm? Look, man, Floyd Mayweather, right? You know that Philly shell that he does, that very sophisticated defensive stance that he has, right? The Philly shell. Okay. How many times does he get punched in the shoulder? Now, here's the thing. In boxing, do they count that? I don't know. It depends on the judges. I would imagine a very experienced boxing judge is going to look at that and say, well, you know what? Maybe I'm not going to count that as some sort of what do you call it? As some sort of point, right? Because that's a defensive mechanism. You are using your shoulder and your arm to block the whole entire shot. So, I would imagine they don't count that because obviously every single scorecard is extremely favorable historically to Floyd Mayweather, but you never know with MMA judges. Obviously, sometimes MMA judges are no different than boxing judges. You know what? As a matter of fact, they are literally the same, which is insane because you know what? You start to think, what are the backgrounds of these people and what are the criterias they are scoring these particular points at. So long story short, 17 punches. Let's minus that down to 5. Okay, so that means Arman Sarukian literally took 5 punches in that fight, and maybe they weren't as clean because when you look at his face after the fight, I don't know, his face looked clean, right? There wasn't much damage or anything like that. But all right, let me see. Let me see if I can find a picture of his face after the fight. Arman. And by the way, how about that photo of him and Kamzat eating camel together, right? In Qatar, right? How many of you would eat camel, right? I heard that that was very nutritious, and it was very high in protein. Oh man, ESPN had a reel of Ilya, I'm sorry, of Armin eating that with Kamzat. I don't know if Kamzat was eating it. Maybe Kamzat was just like looking at him like, "Hey, brother, I want to see you eat this. Let me see if you're not, bitch. Okay, I want to see if you're man enough. You man enough to choke hooker. But let me see if you're man enough to eat camel while I sit here and not eat camel because I am champ and you must eat camel because you are contender, brother. This is how it go, brother." But no, I don't know. I maybe Kamzat was eating it with him, but they were obviously very prominent in the camera angles to show Armin adamant in eating that that camel. By the way, post fight after, I would wonder how would that affect his performance, maybe positively or negatively, had he eaten that, let's say, after the weigh-ins, right? But either way, he won that one. Let's see what his face looked like. Hold on, let me see these comments here. Uh, let's see here. Okay. Okay, so Fresh says Ilya was KO'd by his wife. Okay. Should take the belt from him. Okay, Alex says, I believe he was going to fight Paddy if he didn't pull out. You know what? That seems like the best choice, right? Because look, think about it, right? That's the most logical choice. Him and Paddy have such, I'm not going to say a beautiful history because it's really ugly, the things that they say to each other, but beautiful in a sense of good promotion, right? It's perfectly put together. They fought and street fought each other at a hotel in London, threw hand sanitizers at each other. That's why Paddy goes and calls him Mr. Hand Sanitizer, mate. You are Mr. Hand Sanitizer. Every time someone asks him about Illa Topuria, hey, Paddy, what do you think about Illa Topuria? And then Paddy says, who, mate? I don't fucking know who that is. You must mean Mr. Hand Sanitizer, mate. So they got a good history together. And Paddy, he basically told Ilya, hey, you know what? I can see why the Russians terrorize your people because obviously from 2008 and on, there was a war between Georgia and Russia. And obviously, Paddy, being the historical, scholar that he is, and I'm obviously saying that, lightly. Okay, he obviously used that as a way to exploit that and use it as a way to basically get in his head. So next thing you know, they're at a Twitter war together. This was even way before Paddy got signed to the UFC. Next thing you know, Ilya gets signed to the UFC. Paddy's in the UFC. Now this European rivalry that they have going on, they can take to the world stage, right? So it's a beautiful beef that they got going on. And it was going to be an opener for Paramount TV as as their first fight heading into their new TV deal. Let's see here. So okay, he was gonna fight Paddy if he didn't pull out. That according to Alex, Melon Juice here says he pulled out. Too many strong UFC employees like Bisping and DC saying he has to fight Armin. Yeah, you are right about that, man. Listen, DC and Michael Bisping are obviously UFC employees, right? I mean, let's be honest about this. They are nothing like MMA Guru, even though MMA Guru is, you know how we feel about him in this channel. That's besides the point. But the fact remains is that he is not a UFC employee, right? Even if he is friends with the heavyweight champion of the world right now, Tom Aspinall, right? He's not a UFC employee. He's not a shill. So therefore, he doesn't have to basically listen to anyone or toe the line of some sort. But when it comes to Michael Bisping and DC, boy, they are company men, right? Michael Bisping will literally ride for the UFC. I mean, look, if the UFC was the English, redcoats in 1776, right? Bisping would be a UFC loyalist to the max. He would be a redcoat UFC loyalist to the max, and that's exactly how he behaves, and rightfully so. They gave him a job as a commentator, and that's what you do when you work for a company. You toe the line in which you are told what to do. So, what does the UFC ultimately want? They want an Arman Sarukian matchup. Maybe they want a Paddy Pimblett matchup. Either one of those fights would have been good. Here's the thing, right? A lot of you guys are assuming that the UFC wants Paddy Pimblett and Illa Topuria. They do, but at the same time, they don't. And let me tell you why. Right now, there is no incentive to boost their pay-per-view numbers. Because guess what? Starting January, every UFC fight that you're going to watch on the numbers episodes are going to be free. The numbered events are ultimately going to be free. They are going to be free, and when they are free, you don't have to pay money. And when you don't have to pay money, then the UFC is not incentivized to give you Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz, part 3, which, by the way, would do insane numbers. The UFC is not obligated to make Tom Aspinall, the current heavyweight champion of the world, taking on the greatest of all time, John Jones. Big pay-per-view numbers. They don't need to do any of that. Khabib versus Conor McGregor, part 2. Beef has reignited. And for the first time ever, the co-main event is going to be Ian Gary and Islam. Even though they're both fighting for the title, they both are going to take a back step to their masters, Khabib and Conor McGregor. Can you imagine that? It's like Ian Gary and Islam are going to take the co-main event so that their senseis, who are not, current world champions, are going to headline over them. Can you imagine? Okay, well, they don't need to do that. Because if they were going to have a scenario like that, they would just put Ian Gary and Islam Makhachev and Khabib and Conor on the same card with Ian Gary and Islam as the main event. Now, why would they do that? Plain and simple. The reason why they would do that is because they really don't care about pay-per-view numbers. It doesn't matter the placing of the card or anything like that. Their incentive right now is basically zero to make compelling matchups. So what does that mean? That means that what they are now willing to do is create matchups that are compelling in terms of competitive architecture. And sometimes they don't have to do that. Sometimes a Paddy Pimblett versus an Illa Topuria fight could be on high demand. So yes, I agree with that. Fresh says Helwani hanged his mind and wants to see Arman for the title. Yes, okay, so you're saying that he wants to see Arman for the title. What specific reason? Does he have like a specific friendship with Arman? Does he just like Arman personally? What is his overall goal to have, Arman fight for the title? What is the goal? What would his reason be? What would it do for his, I guess the only thing that you could really think of is the fact that he's a fan, right? And a personal fan of his. Did you see the video of John dancing at the wedding? They loved him. Are you talking about when John visited Chechnya and Kamzat? I'll tell you. Look, man. Let me tell you what I find really funny about that. Right? Just this fake outrage that people have. Oh my God, John Jones is an evil man because he went to go visit Ramzan Kadyrov. He went to go visit the evil, Russian Muslim guy. And, look, man, I'm going to be honest with you, right? You don't have to be politically active when it comes to, let's say, the Ukrainian or the Russian conflict, right? But in all honesty, guys, okay, if you put your, moral, high horse out of the way, what makes Ramzan Kadyrov that different from Trump? Let's be honest about this, right? What is it that Ramzan Kadyrov did? Okay, this is what you're going to say. Oh, well, he unalives people. Okay, great. Do you know that Trump unalives people? And guess what? Do you know how many people have probably been unalived because they got sent back to Mexico due to his policy? Now, I'm not saying that he is entirely to blame for it, but please understand where these policies came from. And also, please understand why people look at Ramzan Kadyrov basically in the same light as somebody who has committed some kind of genocide. What makes him any different than Benjamin Netanyahu? I mean, of course, obviously he's facing a lot of scrutiny right now. Like the guy can't even, go to any podcasts without him being, condemned in some kind of way. But at the same time, if he didn't have any of these, what do you call it? If he didn't have any of these bad PR that was coming to Israel, he wouldn't need to go to a podcast in the first place, let alone get rejected by one. So that's all I'm saying is that, man, I think a lot of you guys really need to, chill with your moral high horse. And you know what? Luke Thomas, you guys know how much I respect Luke Thomas. I look up to him, as a journalist, just like how I looked up, the GSP and Anderson Silva as a fighter. I looked up to Luke Thomas as a journalist. He's a very articulate man, very intelligent. And if you're going to be a journalist in MMA, I think you should model yourself after him in some kind of way, but with your own style, right? So I'll tell you what's interesting about Luke Thomas, right? He goes after Justin Gaethje, right? And what was his reason to go after Justin Gaethje? His reason to go after Justin Gaethje was that Justin Gaethje was hanging out in Chechnya, just like John Jones. And of course, Luke Thomas hates John Jones in a nutshell anyway, right? So of course he's going to have something to say about the Ramzan Kadyrov scenario. But when he went after Justin Gaethje, guess what Justin Gaethje spit back at Luke Thomas? He said to Luke Thomas, he said to Luke Thomas, he's like, Luke, what is your problem, bro? Do you think you're just better than everybody else? And you know what, man? Good on Justin Gaethje. You guys know and understand that, not all fighters are really the most articulate people out there or the most thoughtful. But, man, let me tell you, man, Justin Gaethje roasted him on that. And rightfully so, he roasted him on that. Think about it. He roasted him on that because let's really ask ourselves this, right? Like, how do you compare Trump and Ramzan Kadyrov and not in the same light? How? How do you not compare them in that same light? They are literally the same people, right? Now, okay, one guy just knows how to hide it better than the other because guess what? America just knows how to hide its crimes better than everybody else and then point the finger at everyone else. David Rivera, shout out to you, my man. Shout out to you. He says, no, Hawani was a pro Paddy before Armin's fight versus Hangman. Okay. And then Fresh says to you, hola cabron. Hola cabron? Or do you mean hola cabron? I think that's what you mean to say, but all right. Anyways, yeah. So yeah, man, I just think that a lot of people really act like, like straight wussies when it comes to, really assessing their situation with Ramzan Kadyrov, right? Like, I really don't think that he's that different than any other, president in the world, and especially not the American president, right? Like, who are we to judge Ramzan Kadyrov if we got a guy like Trump in office? And look, man, listen, I know that there's a lot of people out there that like him, but let's be real. If you're intelligent enough, and understand that there are things to criticize him about. But at the same time, you also got to understand that the job of being the president, you're not going to satisfy everybody, right? But for whatever reason, Trump seems to not be satisfying anybody at all, whether it's the right or the left, right? There's guys on the right that don't like him. And then some will even say that his strong relationship with Israel may have divided the right wing, right? The right wing side of things, because obviously you see that there's a strong portion of the right wing community that is, vehemently against Israel. And then there are those that are, uh, staunch Zionist conservatives. Okay, Tristan, shout out to you. He says running back Volk versus Lopez is stupid in my opinion. They just fought. Yeah, you know what it is, man? They're trying to fill up a card. It's a fluff. That's what it is, right? Volk is Australian. Lopez is available. Um, and it just seems like the rightful thing to do at this moment of time, right? It just seems like not the rightful thing, but more like the only thing that they can do. You know what I mean? It seems like that's the only thing that they can do. And who else are you going to fill up the card, right? Think about this. Alex Pereira is already fighting Carlos Ulberg. I think Alex Pereira is in that same card. Let me check, right? He says also Movzar is injured. There you go. Yeah, Movzar is injured. That's a very good point, man. Who said that? Who said that right there? Movzar is injured. Fresh, yes. Fresh, you're right. He's injured. So his injury obviously is going to put him out, right? They're like, hey, listen, you know what? We can't have Movzar, so let's call Lopez. I believe Lopez is obviously coming off a win, right? Let me just make sure here. Okay, so Diego Lopez. Okay, so Jean Silva. Okay, that was a Jean Silva win that he's coming off of. So there you go, right? The Jean Silva win is the John Silva win is what got him this fight. And you're right, yeah, they did just fight a while ago. But here's the thing, right? After he lost that back in April, he goes in there and fights a red hot John Silva, and then Movzar is out. So it's kind of like the natural order of things, sort of say, right? It seems like the natural order of things to go. So he says, yeah, he destroyed the fighting nerd. Indeed, he did. Indeed, he did, right? Because honestly, they were kind of getting annoying. All the content that they do with drama and all that. It's very annoying. But anyways, that's what it is. By the end of the day, they find a way to market themselves, which is genius. Obviously, it's not my thing. You know what I mean? Maybe it's not your thing, but a lot of people do find it humorous, hilarious, especially people from the jiu-jitsu community. They love all that goofy stuff. It's what they like to do. But on any regard, what else? What else? How about this? Okay, Omar Nurmagomedov taking on Davison Figueroa. Ooh, I like that fight. Listen, I told you guys, right? In the last Omar win, okay, Omar Nurmagomedov, his last win, okay, so 19-1, his last win against Mario Batista, right? I told you guys, what did I tell you after that fight? Right? We were reacting to that fight live. I told you guys, I don't want Omar to get a title shot. And you guys were surprised. You're like, what? You don't want your Muslim brother to get a title shot? And I'm being honest, no. Because you know how dangerous Marab is. Look, guys, you ever seen Kickboxer with Jean-Claude Van Damme, right? Remember Kickboxer, right? Remember when his brother got beat up, and then he meets that black dude who's like, a US vet that decided to live in Thailand after his military service in Vietnam. And so he's like, yeah, man, you know what? I know this dude in the village. He gonna train you. He's one of the best trainers in the world. Next thing you know, he pulls up over there, and then Van Damme starts training with him. Do you think in the first week that trainer is gonna put him in there against Tom Poe within the first week? You think that trainer is going to put Jean-Claude Van Damme to fight Tom Poe in the first week of training? Heck no. They're like, you know what? This is what we're going to do. We're going to put you to a training camp. And if you remember in the movie Kickboxer, he had a few fights before he got to fight Tom Poe. Okay, he got to do a few Muay Thai fights in Lumpini Stadium, and the next thing you know, now they're in this underground scene. And you're like, okay, now you are ready. You are ready to fight Tom Poe, your brother, remember. Next thing you know, he's like kicking the pole and this and that, bow, 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 and just busting up his legs, really just trying to straighten up his shins. But yeah, man, that's what Umar Nurmagomedov is. I don't think that he is ready for Marab yet because we've seen the beating that Marab gave him the first time around. So we can't have him go in there. So no, I don't think that it was a good idea. And you know what? This is the right course of action. Take on a former champion like Davison Figueroa, right? I'm not going to say he's a pound for pound champion, but obviously he's fought across different weight classes. He was a champion at 125. And right now, he's coming off of a win against Montel Jackson. Now, let me tell you why this is a good fight. Okay, let me tell you why this is a good fight. So, Davison had loss against Peter Yan, and then loses against Corey Sandhagen. Corey Sandhagen knocks out Davison, right? But then he comes back. And then he fights Montel Jackson. Look, you want to know what's really significant about Montel Jackson, right? Very interesting fella. This guy, out of all the 135ers, okay, like his hands are the size of somebody who fights at heavyweight. I kid you not, right? That is a serious 135er. You know what I mean? Like that is a 135er that has serious knockout power. And guess what? Davison went the distance with him. How was he able to go to distance with him? He was able to go to distance because of the championship experience that Davison has had against Brandon Moreno. Do you remember all those 5-round fights he's had with Brandon Moreno? Remember those? Those were epic. Those were insane. Those fights were just round after round and then just grabbing all these rounds in order to get him ready for a future challenge like Montel Jackson. So there it is. He gets past barely, okay, because that was a split decision. That was back in October 11th in the Rio de Janeiro card, right? Very close split decision. Hey, what a surprise. What a surprise, right? What a surprise. Montel Jackson, get this, okay? American fighter Montel Jackson loses in Brazil against Davison Figueroa. Wow. Who would have thought? By the way, by split decision. Okay? And nobody's going out investigating those judges. So here's the thing. This is what makes him the perfect opponent for Umar because he's good enough to test Umar, take him to the limit, but also I don't think that he's viable enough to damage Umar at all. I think Umar is just a little too well-rounded, too dynamic, too quick, very good on the feet, has a good Taekwondo stance, right? Knows how to bounce back and forth. So, yeah, I think that it's going to be a much harder fight for Umar, but not hard to where it's going to damage him or at least hard enough for him to prepare for Marab. Okay? Now, if he was to get past this, should he get Marab? Maybe at the White House. What do you think? Him and Marab at the White House. Okay? Because that's where, look, these are the matchups right now. All the matchups, because everybody is looking at the UFC White House card, right? That's like the ultimate Super Bowl, the once in a lifetime opportunity, to fight in America's 250th birthday. Not really. You're fighting on Trump's birthday because, ironically enough, they changed the date from July 4th, because, by the way, July 4th is a Saturday card. Okay, that's a Saturday. But Trump's like, nah, you know what? My birthday is on June 14th. I think I'd like to give myself a nice birthday present by having a UFC fight in my lawn as the president of the United States. Now, can you imagine? Can you imagine that? Okay, I'm trying to do my Trump impression. It's very difficult to do a Trump impression, but yeah. Can you imagine that? Yes. Can you imagine that? It's going to be great. It's going to be great. We're going to make America great again. We're going to have great fights. We're going to try to get John Jones in there. If John Jones can try to stay away from the coke, hey, John, let me stop. He says, yeah, he destroyed the fighting nerd. Okay, got it. Okay, so yeah, man. What else? What else do we have right now? The main card of UFC 324, that's not fully announced yet. I think that's something that they are working on. And obviously, UFC 325 is a card that they are working on as well because you know it's a little far away. When is the card for UFC 325? When is that? I believe that's a February card. So UFC 324 is ironically in January 24th, but UFC 325, I believe that is for the February card that they usually have for around that time frame or so. But okay, so let's see what else. What else here? Let me see if I can pull up some Dana White content on here.
Later, we have Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopez. UFC 325 from Sydney, Australia. Volk versus Diego. There's a bunch of other fights on there. I'll tell you later. 1 week.
He says there's a bunch of other fights there. I'll tell you later. All right. Let's see here. What else?
Mark your calendar right now because on January 24th, there will be fighting. UFC 324 headline by Justin Gaethje, Paddy, Pimblett, interim title, and before headline by Justin Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett for the interim lightweight title and
Okay, so other fights, right? You got O'Malley taking on Song Yadong. How about this? Okay, Arnold Allen taking on Jean Silva. Okay, man, Arnold Allen, bro, he's got very good boxing. Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes. Yes, that one is that on 24 UFC? No, that's on something else. I think they're gonna have that later on, or Sean O'Malley versus Song Yadong. Yeah. Um, I'll tell you what I like about the Arnold Allen fight, right? Arnold Allen has very good boxing, right? And by the way, I know a boxer in England that's told me this online, right? Tommy Jacobs. He's I try to get him a few times to do interview with him. It never really came at a good timing, but we talk, and he's trained with Arnold Allen. He's told me some things about Arnold Allen, just in the boxing alone, right? Because obviously that's his specialty. So one of the things that he said about Arnold Allen, he said, man, if this guy wanted to go into pro boxing, he could, right? And could do very well. Well, not just good at boxing. Guess what? Arnold Allen also trains with Faraz Zahabi up in Montreal. Okay. So what is interesting about that is that he is very well rounded, and that if he's going to walk out there with Faraz Zahabi, guess what, man? Faraz Zahabi is going to have a game plan. Bro, Faraz Zahabi is a war master, right? Look at what he did with his brother Ayman Zahabi, right? The way that they were able to maneuver their game plan in the last fight, right? And obviously, Zahabi has had some few losses along the way, but then bounced back, and now he's literally like in the top five right now, right? Just crept up in the top five. So this is the type of caliber that Arnold Allen has as a coach. Now, with Jean Silva, I believe it is Jean Silva that he's fighting, right? Yeah, very interesting matchup, man. We've seen what happened with Jean Silva and Bryce, right? We've seen that. Oh, my goodness, man. I'm telling you, that fight, bro, that fight, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a banger, right? Because you don't know where that fight is going to go. Look, Jean Silva has the susceptibility to go and bang it out with you, right? They also got good jiu-jitsu, obviously coming from the Fight Nerds, right? A Brazilian team. You would imagine that jiu-jitsu is one of their focal points in their training regiments and in their specialty. So he's going to give Arnold Allen some problems in there. Maybe a few submission attempts on Jean Silva if he was to get the right positioning. But if he was to do that, how would Arnold Allen respond? Would he be able to escape? Would he be able to out wrestle Arnold Allen? And you know what? Here's the thing, right? A lot of these UK guys that have good wrestling usually come from a team training elsewhere. Now, look, here's the thing with Ian Gary, right? You know, when I was telling you earlier about how Ian Gary was saying that he wants to do a Dagestan versus Ireland matchup again, right? Wants to recreate it, just like what they did in Bellator, right? With Paul Hughes and Usman Nurmagomedov. But there's not really that same rivalry, is it? Because, you know, Paul Hughes, number one, Paul Hughes is from Northern Ireland. Okay. And anybody that understands the politics of that part of the world understands that, you know, Conor McGregor probably doesn't really care too much for him, right? You know, as a Northern Irish guy. And, you know, if you know about the history behind that. Obviously, if you don't know, Northern Ireland is sympathetic to the British Empire, whereas Southern Ireland, the Dublin section, they are, you know, the Catholics, they are the rebels, they are the ones that fought against the British crown and whatnot. And yeah, you know, the IRA even went out of their way to blow up the British commander, who at the time was the relative of Queen Elizabeth, Lord Mountbatten, right? Literally just rolled up at him, you know, placed a bomb right on the fishing boat that he was at. He thought that he was being inconspicuous, you know, riding around Ireland. And then little does he know, they have these Irish guys that are, you know, that are like basically, you know, trying to hunt them down, right? But on any regards, yeah, very different. Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland, very different, right? So now Ian Gary wants to recreate that. Here's the thing. He said that this is the point that I was trying to make. He said that Conor, he's the protege of Conor. That's the point that I was trying to make. He said that he's a protege of Conor. My answer to that is no, you're not. You're actually a better protege than Conor because you train with different people around the world. And then on top of that, you have better wrestling. As a result of that, you have better kickboxing. As a result of that, you have better jiu-jitsu than that of Conor McGregor. So, you know, he sort of you know, puts himself in, you know, in a much more fruitful environment than, let's say, that of Conor, where it just seems so stagnant that he's just training with John Kavanagh all day and you don't even know what kind of training partners he has. He says, did you see Bryce's podcast? It's back and he's still a loco. Yes. So I believe it was episode 3 that he had going on. It was, well, he obviously was talking about Charlie Kirk and, you know, and he said, oh, I know that this is a late subject, but I want to talk about it. And then, you know, starts spewing off all these other conspiracy theories behind that. Also, speaking of the Charlie Kirk conspiracy theories, how about all these weird conspiracy theories that ultimately Candace Owens is putting out, saying that the French foreign legionnaires are trying to end her life because she said something about Macron and his wife and this and that and yada yada, and then saying that the Israelis were behind it, and the next thing you know, the French were behind it. I don't know, man. There's just so many conspiracy theories to keep up with. But here's the thing about it, right? I just think that, you know how it is in the YouTube game, you know, people are just going to say whatever to get clicks and views. And, you know, unfortunately, that's just the reality of the situation. So, okay. So let's get to the heavyweights, right? Acosta versus Lewis. Look, man, I really like what Acosta is doing, right? What did he do after that fight against the homeboy of Tom Aspinall? He puts on a patch. Very genius idea. Very genius idea. And let me tell you why, right? Obviously, it's a purposeful taunt towards Tom Aspinall, right? The Knight. Shout outs to the Knight. Shout outs to you, my man. And he says, love to all. Yes, love to all with you as well. Let me know what part of the world you are from. First time I've seen you here in the chat. Shout outs to you and everyone around you. Hope you guys are having, you know, a good night. I was going to say a good Thanksgiving, but, you know, I don't celebrate Thanksgiving, but that's probably why I am here, right? Doing this because, you know, while other content creators are probably celebrating Thanksgiving, you know, hey, why not go overtime one time, right? Especially with fight news like this. But I did see, fairly enough, a lot of other people go online and live as well, announcing these fights way earlier than this. So I thought I'd jump in here and catch some of these views as well. So okay, Acosta and Lewis, look, one win away from a title. Derek Lewis has sort of put himself in this category right now where he is sort of the quintessential gatekeeper. He is the gatekeeper of the heavyweight division. And as a result of being the gatekeeper of the heavyweight division, what he has is a very interesting position where if the guys beat him, they are basically one win away, either one win away or a couple of wins. No, it's literally one win away from winning or getting a title shot. That's it. Just one win. One win. That's all that he needs. And you know what? Listen, Tom Aspinall needs a new rival. But here's the thing. This Tom Aspinall really need a new rival. Because what we have going on with Cyril Gane right now, okay, what we have going on with Cyril Gane right now is a person that is literally a bad matchup for Tom Aspinall. It's Tom Aspinall is a very bad matchup for. I'm sorry, Cyril Gane is a bad matchup for Tom Aspinall. Why is he a bad matchup for Tom Aspinall? Well, we've seen the fight. Tom Aspinall can't take him down. Okay, and what is Tom Aspinall's greatest threat? It is his submissions, right? In comparison to other UFC fighters, that is one of his biggest assets aside from the knockout power. Now, here's the thing with Cyril Gane, right? That a lot of you don't really understand. When he took on Francis Ngannou, and granted, Francis Ngannou had a busted up knee, okay? But a busted up knee is still a busted up knee, and his hands still work. And with his hands being able to work, he could have still knocked out Cyril Gane. But either way, right, we can just go through different variations and speculations, but we just got to go off of face value. And what we see in face value is that he was able to counteract the power of Francis Ngannou. He was able to overcome that with his technical striking, and not only his technical striking, his will to persevere. Let's say if he was to get hit with a big shot by Cyril Gane. So going in with Tom Aspinall, he was going to be a problem. Plus, Tom Aspinall could barely land a glove on him. Barely. I'm not saying that he couldn't. I'm not saying that he didn't have, the wits and all to do so, but he could barely land a glove on him, okay, because of the defensive skills that Cyril Gane has. Looking at it, dude, I think Acosta is a way worse matchup than Tom Aspinall. To be honest with you, you know who else is an even worse matchup than all of them? It is Gable Stevenson. Okay, Gable Stevenson is an even worse matchup for all of them. But here's the thing, Gable Stevenson, he's got, some accusations coming his way. Not only does he have coming his way, the UFC is willing to bypass it because that's how bad the heavyweight division is right now. Now, I'm not saying that Gable Stevenson doesn't deserve it, but man, listen, these accusations that they got going on him, it is insane. But then again, you also got to understand, there are people out there that lie about all types of accusations all the time. So you really got to take it with a grain of salt when it comes to these types of stories. But nonetheless, that is what's going on. They're trying to lobby Gable Stevenson to get in there. Why? Because they want to make the heavyweight division great again. Melon Juice says Aspinall's greatest threat is blocking jabs with his face. Explain what that means. Are you saying that he lacks a certain sense of head movement? And if so, at what capacity, and what are some fights that you've seen that would indicate that? So yes, this fight with Acosta and Lewis, very important. Okay, very important to for the heavyweight division, right? We need new matchups, new blood. And you know what? Lewis, even though he's literally fought everybody, right? Think about this, right? Derek Lewis has fought uh, Daniel Cormier. He's also fought Volkov, not Volkan, Volkov. He's fought Volkov. Who else has he fought? Tai Tuivasa, obviously, right? Derek Lewis, I think, has the most knockouts in UFC history right now, right? Probably more than Francis Ngannou, but that's because he's much more experience longer term than that of Francis Ngannou. But all right, let's see here. Let's see, Derek Lewis. Okay, so he's got a win over Myson Tybura. He's won a decision over Francis Ngannou. How about that, right? That's kind of what keeps him right there. Fresh says every fight he gets tagged every fight, but uses brute force to win the fights. That's the problem with Cyril and John. Okay. So you're saying that's the problem that Tom Aspinall is inherently just going to have with facing a stylistic matchup that would that John or let's say Cyril Gahn would present. Is that what you mean? Is that what you are alluding to? And if so, let me know on that one. And yeah, very astute observation on your part there. So Derek Lewis is coming off of a 2-fight win streak, right? He's got that win over Taliesin Teixeira, knocked him out in 35 seconds. And then prior to that, knocks out Rodrigo Nascimento in the third round, 49 seconds in the third round. And then before that, he loses to Jailton Almeida. So you see, here's the thing with Derek Lewis, right? Not only is he, let's say, the gatekeeper, but he is also always one win away from getting a title shot. Now, beating Taliesin Teixeira. Okay, where was he at in the rankings around that time? I believe he is currently ranked number 15. I believe he was ranked a little bit higher when he took on Derek Lewis, or maybe he was just there at number 15. But all right, you know what? That's still a good enough win. It's a top 15 win. It's not a no-name win or anything like that. He's staying within that range of people that he needs to be fighting. Prior to that was Rodrigo Nascimento, and well, now he's currently signed to the PFL. How about that, right? He competed in the UFC's heavyweight division. Now he is signed to the PFL. Fresh says, but of course, Pantoja crushes all of them. Listen, bro, I know that Pantoja is your favorite 125er, but Joshua Van, my Asian brother from Texas, is gonna do him in, bro. I think that Joshua Van is he's a very special fighter. And on top of that, he's an Asian American, so that's gonna bring more money to the UFC, having like let's say Laos, Myanmar, Vietnamese, Filipino type of fans that he's gonna bring to the UFC. And yeah, man, I think he's very talented, man. He's a very talented kid. Now look, Pantoja, he's very well rounded. Don't get me wrong, right? He's very well rounded. In fact, if there's any 125er that could match anything close to what DJ has done during his time as a 125 champion, well, that would probably be Pantoja. And I can see why you ride his coattails so hard, bro. I get it, right? But I think Joshua Van wins that one. When is that one? That's coming up soon, right? That is in the that's in the December 6th card, man. So that's in the UFC 323 card. So, which obviously is headlined by Jan and Marab, Pantoja and Van. Obviously, the co-main event for that one. Moreno taking on Tatsuro Taira. And then Henry Cejudo. How about that? Mr. Henry Cejudo, little man himself, right? Fighting other little men in the form of Peyton Talbot. All right. Very interesting stylistic matchup, right? You see Henry, obviously he's all about the WWE, type of, cringe thing. When he gets on the camera, he starts like, putting on that little mad, midget angry face that he has going on, like everything about him, just pure WWE entertainment, right? He says, yeah, that helped Weili being Asian. Yeah, no, it didn't, man. But you know what? Obviously, Shevchenko is a special fighter in comparison to Weili Zhang. And obviously, Weili Zhang had to drop the belt at 125 to move up to fight there. And that's just how it goes sometimes, man. People move up a weight all the time. And, as a champion, they move up a weight class to fight another champion to go for another belt. And I mean, they fail. It happens, right? I mean, obviously, BJ Penn did that with George St. Pierre. Israel Adesanya did that with Jan Blachowicz. And the list goes on. Max Holloway did that with Dustin Poirier in 2019, only for Max Holloway to come back and beat him. By the way, how about that, right? I told you guys that Max Holloway was going to beat him in that one. Did I not? Did I not get some people on here that were very skeptical of Dustin Poirier, losing that fight? Because I told you he was going to lose that fight. I told you that sometimes some fighters age better than other fighters, right? It's not about what they did when they were young. It's about right now. And right now, even though that Max Holloway is a little bit older, even though Dustin Poirier is a little bit older, it was Max Holloway by the end of the day that preserved his brain and preserved his wits and all in order to get the win, right? And it showed. Let's see here. Fresh says, do you think Whaley will get the next run versus Dern? Yes, I think that is the next course of action, obviously, right? But obviously, they both are coming off of a fight. So, okay, yeah, Dern has that win. Whaley has that loss, both by decision, right? By the way, I told you guys in the middle of that fight, I said, hey, listen, watch how this fight is going to look like the Islam Makhachev fight, right? You could go back on. By the way, everybody that's on this live right now, go back to the live stream that I did for UFC 324, and guess what? That was that it's all right there. By the way, it's great that I put timestamps. By the way, so at least now you can see that. Yeah, I have receipts when I say certain things, right? And I have so. Go look it up and go check it out and see if I confirmed everything as that fight was going on. Half guard by Shevchenko right on top, right? Ground and pounding away. I said Islam's going to do the same thing in the next fight in the main event as we're watching that co-main event, and lo and behold, that's exactly what it was. So okay, with Dern and Whaley, I think that Dern is going to. No, you know what? Listen, I don't think that Dern wins that one. I think Whaley is elite. It just so happens that Shevchenko is even more elite. So, do you think Miller is stuffing a turkey? Of course he is, man. The question is, why are you not? Maybe you are. I don't know. But, wherever you guys are at, man, shout out to all of you. Don't forget to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, because I am literally here giving you guys the news of these fight announcements just as it's happening right here on the 5th episode of the conference call podcast combat radio mode that we are on right now. So the pay-per-view bouts that Figueroa had, right? Let's see here. Both on 2020, the fights that he had with Perez and Moreno. So 255 and then 256 back to back, literally in the same month that he fought, right? From November 21st to December 12th. Yeah, he fought in that one. That was back in the pandemic. Wow. Okay. UFC 255. Okay. So what else? What else is going on right here? Okay, the matchup. So Jan Blachowicz taking on Bogdan Gustav. I think we did go over these fights, but yeah, Grant Dawson against Manuel Torres. Terrence McKinney versus Chris Duncan. Yeah, I'm going with Duncan on that one, right? I think that Terrence McKinney is on a decline right now, and Chris Duncan is on the up. And anybody that knows and understands the sport, that's what it is. Macy Barber against Silva. Yeah, Barber's going to get a decision on that one. Now on to the prelims. Nazim taking on Fariz Zahem. I'm going to go with Nazim on that one. Now, Marvin Vettori taking on Bruno Ferreira. Okay, what's interesting about this, obviously, Marvin Vettori is the veteran here, right? Bruno Ferreira is the upcoming prospect. This is where the veteran actually beats the prospect, right? Just the championship rounds that Marvin Vettori has, and then the lack of championship and and high pressure situations like that in those fights, I think is going to overcome Bruno Ferreira in this fight. And then Edson Barbosa taking on Jalen Turner. So what's really interesting about this, obviously Jalen Turner is coming off of a long layoff, right? Now with Edson Barbosa, he's a veteran, right? Very opposite of the Marvin Vettori and the Bruno Ferreira fight, right? this is where, even though on a normal basis, let's say if Jalen Turner was active, I would give this surely to Jalen Turner. But the fact that he hasn't been active, and the fact that for how long has he been able to even make 155? By the way, he's 6'3" at 155, right? And you would imagine the type of weight that he puts on in between fights, and then how hard it is for him to get down to 155, right? I've fought at 155, close to 6 feet tall, and I do get, a little bit of some size on me. And after that, it would be very difficult to go down to 155 as you get older. So I'm curious to see how that's going to play out. And Edson Barbosa, how old is he now? Like, okay, so 39. So he's been at 155 for a long time. He's even dropped down to 145 for the life of him, for whatever. But I guess, you know what, if you are at the right size, I suppose you're able to do that. But yeah, you know, yeah, so yeah, Fresh says, do you think Miller is of course he is, man. It's what you white Americans do, you know what I mean? To celebrate how you guys massacred the pilgrims and all that, right? That's what they do. So that's what it is. No, but of course, everyone, look, here's the thing about Thanksgiving, right? I think a lot of you don't really know why you celebrate it. Let's be honest about this, right? The reason why a lot of you don't really understand why you celebrate is because I think you just follow the calendar trend, and then follow the muscle memory that's behind it. Okay, you know that after Halloween, you know that you got to get Thanksgiving decorations going. I mean, I don't know, not everyone does it, but if you're like one of these weird families that has to decorate every time, every season, or this and that, I mean, it just gets really redundant. But at the same time, it's muscle memory. Okay, now Thanksgiving is done. Guess what's coming up? Now it's December. Now people are starting to put up Christmas lights and all of that, right? Now, next thing you know, now they put down the Christmas lights. Okay, so then there's nothing New Year's, nothing really, unless you put on these, weird looking New York, New York New Year's looking glasses or whatever that they wear, right? And then what happens after that? No, oh, okay, I guess Valentine's, right? But then, yeah, no one really puts up decorations on that unless you're really adamant in doing so. And then what happens after that? Then it's February, then it's March, it's St. Patrick's Day, and it's so on and so forth. It's just on and on and on over. And I mean, it's just absolute redundancy. But you guys got to understand, it's literally muscle memory that you're operating under. It's not really anything out of, sometimes out of anything that you want to do. And look, this is a reason why a lot of people fight when it comes to families. You ever hear these, horror stories of families fighting on Thanksgiving? The reason for that is because nobody really wants to celebrate Thanksgiving, and a lot of you don't really know why you do it in the first place. That's just the reality of it, right? Like, come on, anybody in the chat right now, I want you to tell me right now why you celebrate it. I want you to tell me right now why you celebrate it. And I guarantee you're not going to really have a coherent answer as to why you're going to say it, because what you're going to say is something to the extent of, well, it's all about family togetherness, man, or this and that. Well, I mean, listen, do you really need one specific day that everybody is going to, fill up, what do you call it? The grocery stores trying to get turkeys. And then on top of that, how about Jim Jones, the rapper? Did you guys see him? He rejected this old woman in Harlem, when he was doing the turkey drive. To be fair, she cut in line, and I think that's what really annoyed him and told her to get the back of the line. But yeah, Melanju says, is a turkey big enough to practice an armbar? Is Miller submitting the turkey? You know what, man? Yo, that's really good. You know what? It depends how big your turkey is, right? Yeah, it depends how big your turkey is, but I don't know, man. I think that yeah, that's very weird, right? You'd have to be a special weirdo type of jiu-jitsu guy to do that, right? Like, for example, I don't know if you guys have ever seen like roasted pig, like they call it lechon or whatever, right? You'd probably see like one of these weird like Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Hawaiian or Filipino dudes that would probably do a number on, on the lechon or something. You know what I mean? Like, like imagine that, like rolling around with, or what, I don't know what, sick human being would think of doing that. I tell you what, man, I would, if I knew a guy like that at a gym, I would never roll with him. Like, nah, man, we ain't, touching nothing. You know what I mean? If we're gonna like practice combat in any kind of way, I'd rather, we just box or kickbox so I could just, fight you from a distance, and then it would motivate me to like really get away from you. But on any regard, no, no, not at all, not at all. And in fact, I never really ate it when I did. So it's not, yeah, it's not. Like, look, it's not a big deal, man. I've had, you know what, man? Listen, I've had people who come from pork eating cultures, right? Whether it's, black people, Filipinos, Mexicans especially, name any other group in the world, right? I don't know, Kazakhstanis, right? That, those Borat type of people that, that are the non-Muslim side of that country that like to eat pig and all of that, right? All of these people, or one of these people, I don't want to mention which people asked me, but they've asked me before, like, hey, uh, you really don't eat pig? I'm like, don't you think you're missing out? I'm like, no. I'm like, listen, if I'm gonna go eat turkey bacon, if I'm gonna eat bacon, why not eat just turkey bacon that's available? You know what I'm saying? That's really all it is. It's like, come on, man. It's not it's not the biggest deal in the world, and I don't think you're missing out much on it. He says, isn't that prime island food? Yeah, but at the same time, a Muslim is a Muslim, and and a Muslim is either going to eat it or not, and more times other than not, a Muslim. Look, think of it like this, right? Most Muslims will not eat pork, right? They will not eat pork at all. You could name me a Muslim that you know in your life that has probably drank, you've probably seen drink in front of you, you drank with, but they'll never touch pork. You've probably seen a lot of Muslim youths from, the urban, city environments, right? You like, those Arab kids that live in Chicago, or those Somalians that live in, Minnesota, or the African American Muslims that live in Philadelphia. They all like to smoke blunts. Let's be real about it, right? They all like to smoke blunts, but guess what? They will never eat pork, right? Okay. Take for example Zayn Musa boxing, right? You guys constantly make fun of him every time he comes on the live stream and he's betting on these fights, and constantly basically get at him for betting while he's a Muslim, right? And there's a lot of Muslims, unfortunately, that have these gambling problems also in Great Britain, in the United States, when it comes to combat sports. If not all of sports, or just gambling in terms of casino or blackjack tables and whatnot, right? But even with that addiction, they'll never eat pork. Lamb and trocte is the best. It's pretty close to pork. Well, there you go, right? So if we're gonna go in that direction, then yeah, I mean, why do you need pork when you have beef, you have chicken, and in light of today, you have turkey, you have all these things that Allah has provided you for, right? Why do you need to disobey Allah by having something that is not halal, right? When He's made everything else halal, He's made lamb halal. You even admit how great lamb is, right? So why do you need to do that? It's kind of like the Adam and Eve story, right? Obviously, what was the one rule that Allah told Adam and Eve? Allah's only one rule is, look, don't eat that forbidden apple. That's it. Everything else is halal, but don't eat that forbidden apple. Well, guess what? The pig is haram and it's forbidden. Don't eat it. And plus, it's disgusting. You know what I mean? I wouldn't even dream of it. You know what, man? Listen, I had a Libyan Muslim brother, right? Told me one time, he said, I swear to you, he told me this one time. I believe I was at a Vietnamese restaurant where I saw him, right? I was with, company, he was with company, and he said, brother, you know what? If I don't know why I'm speaking with an accent. He was actually, very Englishly coherent like I am, but anyways, for just entertainment's sake, he says, "Brother, I do. You know what? When I die and I go to Jannah, perhaps maybe I can eat pork when I'm up there." And by the way, keep in mind he sounds nothing like this, but I'm just disguising his voice just in case anybody there could try and pick up on who it is. But yeah, man, that's what it is, man. He said that he would eat pork if he was to, be in Jannah, if he was to be in heaven. I was like, okay, well, very interesting thing. I know he's just saying that out of a joke, out of a tongue in cheek, and doesn't really mean much by it. But I just think, man, I couldn't even dream of eating it, even if it is allowed. That's how disgusted I am by it. And I think that is literally what you get out of an Islamic education, not just an Islamic education, but you see a lot of athletes, they also don't eat pork. Ronaldo, by the way, I don't know if this has any Saudi influence behind it because now he lives in Saudi Arabia and plays out there. But even before that, when he was living in Manchester, playing for Manchester, or when he was playing for Real Madrid in Spain, he never ate pork. And his reason was, oh, Brad, I don't eat pork because it's not healthy. I don't like to eat it. It's not good. And then he even mentioned how he thought the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was a genius. He says, yeah, like Prophet Muhammad, and peace be upon him. That's me in my own accent saying that. Now let me go back to his Portuguese broken accent. Yeah, so a very smart man because, he said that you must fast, you must not eat for a long period of time, and this is good for your stomach and this and that. But man, Ronaldo, man, what an awesome dude, bro. What a great guy. Really great guy. I know that it's easy for people to say how great a celebrity is or this and that, and especially if you love them, especially if they play for a team that you love, and and they score all the points for your team and they get you all excited. Same thing with a fighter too. It's easy to say that, just tongue in cheek or just saying it just to be kind, but he really is, man. Really wonderful, wonderful human being. I remember seeing a short of him and his son, right, where he said, hey, my son one time, I think this is a new thing that I'm going to do now. I'm going to do Ronaldo impressions now, but, just for fun, and of course. But yeah, my son, he liked to buy many sneakers and this and that. And, he buy all types of sneakers. He's no problem. And then one day I say to him, hey, listen, Ronaldo Jr., you come with me to homeless shelter. I will show you all these kids, that have absolutely nothing. And you know what? Listen, all jokes aside and all accent bantering aside, my goodness, it was a beautiful moment because he said that his son said, "Hey, you know what, Dad? I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take all the shoes that I have, and then I'm going to go and donate it to the poor." And I thought, wow, that's a very beautiful story. And not only that, too. Listen, I'm going to be honest with you, okay? The other reason why I'm so biased towards Ronaldo, okay, and this debate that people have, who's better, Ronaldo or Messi? Well, here's the truth of the matter, right? Sport wise, right now, Messi is in his prime, right? That is undeniable. Ronaldo, yeah, he's still in great shape, still, plays good for someone his age at 40. By the way, if you're 40 at soccer, that's very old, right? Not if you're Ronaldo, because obviously he has his wits and all and still can play at the highest level, regardless of what you may believe Saudi leagues can be. But the comparison between him and Messi is, look, he supports people of Palestine. He's donated to causes that deal with that particular persuasion of things. And here comes Messi. What does he do when he goes to Israel or that part of the world? He goes and kisses the wall. You know what I mean? So that tells you what is what with that. He says, "Do you eat shrimp, crab, and humor? You mean hummus?" Yes, yes. I like. I don't mind shrimp or crab. Not necessarily my all-time favorite, but I suppose I could tolerate it. So yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's see what else. What else do we have going on in the world of MMA right now? Okay, so let's go to Mac Life and see what Dana White has to say here.
Rob, off some stuff here before we really get into it. But don't forget, UFC 23 is live December 6th from T-Mobile Arena. Merab looks to make history for his fourth title defense in one calendar year. He's on a 14-fight win streak. This guy hasn't lost in 6.
Wow, 14 fight win streak. That's insane. That's an insane. Look, uh, 14 fight win streaks are easy to come by in boxing. You know that? It really is. It really is. Like I could line up 14 fights in a matter of a year, and knock all these guys out and then say that I'm 14 and 0. Like that you can literally do that in boxing, right? I know a lot of guys that are like that. Like, okay, I'm like 2 and 0 in boxing. Like, okay, sure you are. Like when you talk to somebody that doesn't understand fighting, they're like, oh wow, he's undefeated in boxing, and then next thing you know, you're in a fight town like like Sacramento, like Boston, like New York, and the next thing you know, you're meeting like boxers that all are like 5 and 0, 6 and 0, and this and that, and like wow, nobody has losses, like you know what I mean? But yeah, in MMA though, to have that win streak, it is special. And yeah, that's not something to be taken for granted, at least not in MMA.
7 years.
No losses in 7 years, right? Kind of reminds me of what was the other 135er's name back in the day? Renat Barrow. Okay, remember Barrow, the one that TJ Dillashaw beat up. He was undefeated for 10 years. He was like, at the time when he fought TJ Dillashaw, he was like 39-1 or some crazy record like that, right? So yeah, kind of in that same trajectory right now.
Co-main event, Pantoja, Joshua Van. Pantoja's on an 8-fight win streak. Guy looks unstoppable. He holds the flyweight record for most wins and finishes in UFC history. And Joshua Van's coming off one of the best fights you'll ever see in 2025 against Brandon Roy Ball. All right, let's get into it. So, obviously, you just saw Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett for the interim title. Earlier, Topuria posted, I'm dealing with some personal problems, so we're not gonna
quote unquote personal problems, okay? Whatever that means.
The first quarter. So the winner of Gaethje versus Paddy will be the interim title, and then they will face Topuria. Kayla Harrison and Amanda Nunes for the bantamweight title. That's a badass fight. Kayla, it's her first title defense after beating Juliana Payne, and she comes back to take on Kayla Harrison. Win, hell, that fight isn't incredible.
Yeah, I also don't think Nunes is going to win that fight either, right? Like, I think, look, man, very few people can beat Kayla Harrison, and unfortunately, even as elite as Amanda Nunes is, I don't think that she's the one to do that, right? I think that okay, look, the retirement that she had, what was it like from UFC 289? That was the last time that she fought. Listen, man, a lot of what Kayla Harrison was doing after that just evolved since then, and I think that it would be a serious problem, a real serious problem. Once they get in there.
O'Malley and Song Yadong. Waldo Cortez.
Okay, so let me give you a little bit of some prediction against O'Malley versus Song Yadong, right? I know Song Yadong trains out in Team Alpha Male with Uriah Faber, trains out here in Sacramento. But to be honest with you, I think Sean O'Malley has his number. Look, I think Sean O'Malley is so elite that the only people that are able to beat him is Merab. And I think that you guys are going to start to see that once he fights other people other than Merab. And obviously, Song Yadong is one of those guys that's trying to climb up there in the 135 division. And O'Malley right now is sort of, well, how do I say this, right? Remember John Fitch back in the days, right? John Fitch was the ultimate gatekeeper. It was like as if he was just knocking everyone down, right? Not knocking everyone out, but he did get knocked out at the end by Johnny Hendricks, and he was never the same since. But yeah, he just kept, knocking people down. And then prior to that, he had George St. Pierre in the hardest fight of his life back in 2008. You know what I mean? And then he just, was never the same since. So O'Malley, and Omar Nurmagomedov right now at 135 are like what I would call the modern John Fitch of the 135 division. So yeah, by the way, John Fitch has a very interesting podcast, very underrated. You guys should check it out. Right? He's got a lot of interesting stories from back in the days, especially if you're one of these old school MMA guys like me. I think you'd really appreciate a lot of the stories that he has going on there. So yeah, I highly recommend it. I highly recommend that you guys go check it out. But all right, continue on with Dana.
Costa versus Derek Lewis. Waldo coming off a win a week ago. Took the fight on 2 days' notice. Comes in and wins by a knockout and coming off the eye poke knockout win. This guy's having a fucking great year. And, him and Derek Lewis is going to be fun as hell.
Yeah, him and Derek Lewis are going to be extremely explosive. I told you guys, right? Waldo Acosta, I think he gets this one, man. I honestly think that he gets this win. It's going to be too easy for him, to not get this win. Derek Lewis, look, you know what's weird about him, right? Um, Obviously there's going to be different variations of this, but they tested his testosterone level, and he said that like, oh well, one time I tested my testosterone, they said that I was really low or this and that, and I was like, yeah, dude, because they probably tested you while you were overtraining, within the cycle of your training camp. Yeah, so naturally that's going to happen, but do you measure yourself when you're peaking? But that goes to say that this is Derek Lewis in a nutshell. What he does is he likes to play possum. Okay, you've seen it a few times. Remember Scott Smith when he took on what was that dude's name? That New Yorker. I forgot his name. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Where Scott Smith, looked like he got hurt with a body shot, and next thing you know, he comes in there and hits him with a straight shot, and then knocks him out of nowhere, like one of them things, right? So that's Derek Lewis in a nutshell. He likes to play possum. He likes to talk down on himself, like as a very self-deprecating way. Like he says that, man, you know what? I literally only train 30 minutes a day. Like he really will say things like that. Like he'll really say things like that. But overall, it's not true. It's he probably trains, a couple of hours a day as he should, right? But then, he plays it off that like as if he doesn't. He's like, oh, what's strength and conditioning? I mean, yeah, he's like asking you what strength and conditioning is, and yet he has like the most knockouts out of all the UFC heavyweights, right? But then again, I don't know, man. Maybe that's not saying much because of the state of the heavyweight division right now. Now, I was telling you guys earlier, right? I honestly think that what's his name, Stevenson, right? They're really lobbying to try to get Stevenson in there, and the reason why they want to get Stevenson in there is because really, realistically, they don't have a lot of heavyweights right now. Okay, they don't have a lot of heavyweights, and so getting Stevenson in there is like signing Kurt Angle from back in the days. Kurt Angle was going to sign with the UFC instead of the WWE. But guess what? Back then, the WWE paid more money than the UFC. Nowadays, the WWE is owned by the UFC, and the UFC is owned, and vice versa. They're all owned by each other. And then they got a boxing league that they got going on their own with Turkey El-Sheikh, and then that's that. So now it's it is now lucrative for him to try and jump into a much more competitive field, because at some point, uh, Gable Stevenson was going to go into the WWE, and in fact, he was training at their performance center at some point, right? But let me look at and find out what is all this court case. Oh wait, let's finish with Dana White first.
Arnold Allen and Gene Silva. Alexa Grasso versus Rose Namajunas. And just added like an hour ago, 2 hours ago, however long ago, Umar Nurmagomedov versus Figueiredo. Fight is also on the card. And I'm going to announce this for you. So you guys are getting, that's going to be a pay-per-view type fight on Paramount Plus. You can pay your subscription, and I say this all the time. If you haven't seen Mobland, and now my new show is Landman.
Oh man, that is awesome, man. He's promoting Mobland. Look, you know what? That is awesome, though. Look, man, I really rate Mobland. Right? It's literally one of the best performances of not only Tom Hardy's career but also Pierce Bronson's career. Look, man, if you grew up playing GoldenEye, right, with James Bond, the Nintendo 64 game, man, you always looked at Pierce Bronson as the good guy, right? Well, now here he is. He plays an Irish mobster. You know what I mean? It's so hilarious. The whole entire storyline and just the entire thesis of the story is just amazing, right? Just top down overall. And man, Pierce Bronson really puts on being the evil, villainous mob boss. You know what I mean? It's great. It's great seeing him, sort of transition into that role. But yeah, Paramount and UFC, great partnership.
And Mobland and Landman, two of the best shows you'll see ever. Fucking incredible. 1 week later, we have Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopez on Paramount Plus. So that's January 31st. UFC 325 from Sydney, Australia. Volk versus Diego.
Hold up. So you got two UFCs in the same month. Is that right? Is that right? Is that what I am gathering here? So, okay, 323. And then after December 13th, it is Royval and Manel Kopp. And then when is UFC 224? UFC 224 is what date is that? That is on let's see here. What is the date for that one? Okay, the 24th. Oh wow. And then okay, so January 24th is UFC 224. So remember that, right? 224 UFC 220 January 24. That's the best way to remember it. 24 is the best way to remember it. So now 325, when is 325? When is the date for UFC? Wow, a 1 week later. That is awesome. That is freaking awesome. A number card, 1 week, 2 weeks in a row. Now, how beautiful is that, right? And you know what? That is only possible by having a Paramount deal, okay? Because check this out. If this was a pay-per-view, you better believe they will drag this out all the way to February. Oh, well, we filled up January. Now we got to fill up February or this and that. Nope. Paramount paid for the UFC $7.7 billion for them to put on as much fights as they humanly can. So you know what that means? Let me tell you what this means. This means that the UFC roster is going to increase even more. How many people are signed to the UFC right now? Okay, so how many people are signed to the UFC? Over 578 fighters. So let's round that off to 600. Okay. Okay, we can even round it off to 550 because they do release a good amount of people at a time, right? They release a good amount of people at a time. So 578 people in the UFC, right? Now that they have a card after card after card, you better believe that they are going to increase their roster. That is what they are going to do. Okay. Now the reason why they're going to increase their roster is because they have a higher demand. They have a higher demand for events, and as the events demand more cards, they demand to have more fighters, more talent. So you know how the Dana White Contender Series works, right? How exactly does it work? Well, it works something like this. They get in there, they fight, and if they impress the boss, then you get signed. There are guys who have fought in the Contender Series and unfortunately have never been signed even with a win. Well, now the dynamic's going to change. I think the Dana White Contender Series, I think the hyping up of the rosters and also the hyping up of the recruitment, right? It's going to get hyped up even more and it's going to increase even more, meaning that they're going to go to more regional shows. The UFC is going to sign more people. That means they're going to have to sign more talent agents and recruiting scouts, meaning matchmakers as well. I don't know if the matchmakers just exclusively do that due to scouting, but I think they're going to hire more scouts and hire people to try and facilitate these needs. Because imagine they have a January card back to back on 2 weeks. One in Vegas, and next thing you know, they're flying over to Australia the next following week, all within the month of January. Now, how awesome is that, right? I mean, that's a great way to, yeah, man, great cards just right before Ramadan. So, very interesting times ahead for the UFC calendar, right? Best time to be a fan right now. But all right, back to what Dana White's saying here.
There's a bunch of other fights on there. Tell you later. How's everybody? You guys good? You having a good Thanksgiving? You got any questions? You happy? You mad? What do
You happy? You mad? You know what? It's interesting that he asks, "Are you happy? Are you mad?" Right? No promote. You know what? Listen, if Eddie Hearn was to put on a fight, oh yeah, by the way, guys, I got Anthony Joshua boxing Jake Paul December 19th. Okay, do you think he's going to ask you, "Hey, are you happy?" No, he's not going to ask you if you're happy. He's going to tell you, "Buy your tickets now. Book your reservations in Miami, and this, that, and the other." That's what he's going to tell you to do, right? He's not going to ask you, "Hey, are you happy?" I know why. I know the psychological reason why Dana White is asking you that, right? Because he knows deep down you guys are not happy about the Volkanovski and the Diego Lopez rematch. You guys are not happy about that, okay? Because look, this is the UFC. This is just how it goes, right? Do you remember who Khabib was going to fight at UFC 223? Do you remember? That was going to be a big card, man. That was going to be a big card, but let me tell you, that card got overshadowed with Conor McGregor throwing the dolly into a bus because Tony Ferguson got injured in that fight week. Okay, tripped over a wire. Was that how he injured that, or was that in the Fox days, the early Fox days? I think that was that one. But any regard, he injured himself. Next thing you know, Khabib now has to fight Max Holloway. Then they bring in Max Holloway that week. They were going to potentially have him fight. Okay, Max Holloway is not cleared by the New York State Athletic Commissions. They bring in Anthony Pettis. I thought, great. This is a great way for him to win the title. Because when Khabib came into the UFC, guess who was champion at the time? Mr. Anthony Pettis, who was on the Wheaties box himself, right? And then prior to him winning that championship, he was actually out here training with Team Alpha Male. I got to train with him and his brother at the time, Sergio, when he was only I think 15 years old. But, really a good group of brothers, good vibes and good, lessons that we learned from them in terms of, how to properly throw a tornado kick and this, that, and the other, right? So, yeah, man, really good, really good year for Pettis during that time when Khabib came in. But they said that Pettis was not ranked high enough at the time. And I thought, can you imagine that? Man, listen, New York State Athletic Commissions are like the Karens of the combat sports world, right? I mean, literally, they are literally like Karens. They're talking about how Anthony Pettis was not ranked high enough to fight Khabib. I'm like, how? Okay, I get it. Maybe he's not ranked high enough right now, but do people not understand the history that this guy was world champion when Khabib was a rookie in the UFC? Imagine that. When Anthony Pettis was champion, Khabib was a rookie, and Khabib's main target at the time was Anthony Pettis. And then Anthony Pettis was on the Wheaties box at the time. So, he was a big name during that time. So they scratched it off. They said, you can't fight him. Okay, who do they bring in? They bring in Al Iaquinta. Okay, so now they brought in Al Iaquinta. And now that whole entire card has has now been rearranged. It still went on to become one of the greatest cards ever, right? Even with a lackluster win by Khabib. Khabib had, let's say, a very Khamzat Islam Makhachev on JDM type of performance, but nonetheless he won. He won. But what I'm trying to say is that that's how the UFC is. You always got to deal with a change that is going on. Another example of this, right? Because this is literally what Diego Lopez and Volkanovski is. The reason why it's like this is because Mozar is injured and he can't fight. Okay, so they got to bring somebody in. Who do they bring in? Well, Diego Lopez. Didn't Diego Lopez just fight Volkanovski? Yes, but he's coming off of a win by John Silva. So, he gets one win after, he loses one. So then he gets back in there because the real contender is not there because he's injured. That's what you have to deal with. That's what you got to do. That's what you have to deal with. And that is the UFC in a nutshell when it comes to, ever-changing dynamics in terms of, switching opponents, sometimes even switching venues. Okay. Oh, speaking of switching opponents, how about this? Remember when Daniel Cormier was supposed to fight John Jones at UFC 200? What happened with John Jones? He pops dirty, right? So who do they call? They call Anderson Silva. They said, hey, listen, come do us a favor. He goes in there. What does Daniel Cormier do? He goes and he wrestles Anderson Silva for 15 minutes. Smartest thing to do, right? Because Anderson Silva, even though if you're a heavyweight with a tank of a head like Daniel Cormier, he could still kick your head in. And he did, by the way, he did kick Daniel Cormier's head in one time. And then, obviously he recovered. And after that recovery, then he was able to basically win the fight with just a 3-round grind, right? Because, let's face it, right? Anderson Silva came off of the couch fighting Daniel Cormier, and Daniel Cormier was literally in shape for John Jones. You understand? Like he was in there, getting ready for John Jones, and the level of shape that he was in to do that is astronomically higher than the peak of Anderson Silva coming off of a couch eating, chips and, and a soda, right? Not even being aware that, hey, I may get called in to fight this week. So they did him a solid. He went in there and fought Daniel Cormier at, I believe, a catch weight, or no, I believe it was at 200 pounds. I believe that they fought 205. But nonetheless, yeah, man, that's the reality of the situation. That's how the UFC is. They're always changing and evolving. And as I was going to say before the Daniel Cormier and Anderson Silva comment, what I wanted to say was that they switched the whole entire venue for John Jones. Can you imagine that? Imagine that. They switched the whole entire venue for John Jones, right? So John Jones gets popped dirty in Las Vegas for his 2018 bout against Alexander Gustafsson. So what did they do? They called California and they said, hey, can we get a venue going over there? So they did. They got a venue in the Coliseum, right in Inglewood, by the way, or not the Staples Center, but for sure Inglewood, right? They got the Coliseum as a venue. They moved the venue from Las Vegas all the way to California, right? And so, man, I don't know what the fans that bought accommodations to go see that fight. I don't know if they just decided, hey, we're gonna go to California instead, because remember that's another extra spending that they have to do just to get to California from Las Vegas from a changed venue. But nonetheless, they got the fight done anyway, and that is the UFC in a nutshell. That is what makes them unique. That is the reason why they got paid $7.7 billion by Paramount, because they know that without really relying on singular talent, and people like that, they know that they can literally, they know that they can literally switch up the card at any time. They can switch up situations at any time. And it is constantly ever evolving and changing at all times. And that's the reality of the UFC in a nutshell. So that's what they had to do with the Volkanovski and the Lopez fight. And that is why a lot of people are not really happy with that reality. So,
Yeah, some guy said L. He's having a rough day. Yeah, go follow Paramount UFC on Instagram too. Paramount UFC. What's up, Flex? Dana? Dana, do you have a message to all the vegans from Great Thanksgiving? Yeah, what the fuck are you people even wasting your time for? You don't have turkey. It isn't Thanksgiving. Let's count. Yeah, they'll be fighting. They'll be fighting soon. We got working on this fight right now. Tell us the rest of the cards. That's all we got so far. That's all we got. We're not even talking about the White House fight yet.
see, there you go. Okay, something important to remember there, right? He said the White House card is not something that I can really talk about right now because you know what? I don't know if, uh, well, look, they said they're going to start February to build the card, right? I think I know why he said February. Okay. It's not that far from June. Okay. And then on top of that, during February, you have all the Muslim fighters that are celebrating and observing Ramadan, right? As they observe Ramadan, they can start calling them during that time and say, "Hey, we got the White House card going. You want to fight in there? What do you want to do? You want to fight there or what?" Uh, that is the perfect time to do it. Right now, they are forming the matchups. Okay, the Volkanovski fight with Lopez could mean something. Okay, that fight could mean something with Volkanovski. Meaning that if Volkanovski wins, he could get in there, fight somebody. If Diego Lopez wins for whatever miraculous reason, I mean, not really, the most miraculous reason ever, but still a possibility nonetheless. Okay. So, yeah, man, there's a lot of moving factors that, we really need to respect before we start taking the White House card into consideration. The only thing that I know that is a for sure shoe in is Conor McGregor because he is a big name. You can't have a White House card without a Conor McGregor or a John Jones or an Islam Makhachev. You got to have one of the top stars, okay? But they know they at least have Conor McGregor in that mix. How about this, right? Is there a world where Islam Makhachev fights Conor McGregor at the White House? I want you to think about that. There's a world that could happen. Well, okay. Well, how will you justify that, right? He hasn't had a win at 170. Uh, yes, he did. He's got a win. He's got two wins at 170. Okay. He's got a win over Donald Cerrone. I know that's not saying much, but also Nate Diaz, which was back in 2016. Still, you can't justify that for at least not for a title. Well, what if you say, all right, listen, no title on the line, you guys just fight. How about it? But then Conor McGregor is gonna mess up the whole negotiation. He said, absolutely not. I want to fight for the title. You know what I mean? And maybe they will grant him his wish. You never know. You never know. That could be a possibility. But I'm just saying, there's just so much going on before you can even really talk about a strong possibility of of any particular card at the White House right now. So just a whole lot of moving parts. Fights have to be made. Fights have to be fought, and then matchmaking has to be sought after. That's how it goes. Okay, so all right, let's see what else here. Yeah, see, so there it is. He says not till February.
I'm drinking Hibiki Japanese whiskey. If you've ever tried this stuff and you know this is a problem. This stuff is really good. Japanese do everything right.
He said that the Japanese do everything right. Yeah, man. Dana's gonna start feeling like a samurai after he's getting a shot of that, Japanese whiskey. Next thing you know, he's gonna start going, oi! You know what I mean? Start going, doing some Mr. Miyagi chops, next thing you know? All right, well that was it. That was it for that video. Let's see. Let's see what this dude is talking about right here. Dana White just shocked everyone, according to Fight Society. All right, let's hear what he has to say here. Oh no, wait. Let's hear what MMA.
My mustache. I trim it. Impression of Dana on mushroom. Impression of Soy Gary watching the Dagestanis jump Dennis and watching. This is actually what's right. This should happen. This is the correct thing to do. It crashed again. What's going on? We still good? Yeah, we're still good. I don't know what's wrong with the chat today. But we're good. We will donate during member stream and you won't do nothing. I will ban you. Permanently, John Smith, if you keep that behavior up, pal. There's no donations in the member stream.
Okay, let's hear what Fight Society has to say. Nothing much going on in that one right here.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
Dana White just gave us some crazy fights to be thankful for on Thanksgiving going into the Paramount Plus deal in 2026. I just made a video a couple days ago talking about how Dana White was fumbling the first Paramount card by not putting a big star on it. The rumor was Amanda Nunes and Kayla Harrison as the main event, and there was some rumors floating around that Pereira versus Goldberg may get bumped up from a later pay-per-view to be the main event of that. But as it turns out, we have an interim title fight between Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett. Okay, so we're going to get into that and the other fights on this stacked card, as well as UFC 325, which is the week after. We have back-to-back numbered cards to start the Paramount Plus deal. My name is Wyatt. Welcome to Fight Society. All right, guys, before we get into it, do me a favor, like and subscribe down below. First off, why are we having an interim title fight? Well, right here, Illa Topuria says just this morning.
All right, so like everybody else, he's probably wondering, yeah, why do we have an interim title fight, right? And probably not too happy about it. All right, fair enough. Here's something you got to understand, right? As I told you earlier, the UFC is an ever-evolving door, okay? If somebody falls off, somebody will be replaced. If a venue falls off, or if a commission doesn't agree with a fight, they will go somewhere else. They are an ever-fluid organization, and as such, well, this is what they had to do. Look, Illa Topuria has issues going on, right? Whatever those issues may be. We don't know what they may be. We think we know. Maybe it had something to do with, relating to the Melt Voice podcast or this and that, or, or the situation that he has going on behind the scenes. But overall, they have people to replace them by the end of the day. And what better way than a good matchup between Paddy and Justin Gaethje? Look, here's the thing. Would it have been monumental to have Paddy Pimblett take on Illa Topuria? I mentioned to you guys this earlier in the pod. I said that it is awesome for Illa Topuria and Paddy to fight each other, especially with the beef that they have going on. And there's a storyline behind it. So it's a great beef and it's a great storyline. And now it's for the title. And Paddy has done enough. Excuse me. Paddy has done enough. He's done enough to be a contender. Well, here's the thing, right? You beat Justin Gaethje. Now you are undeniable. Maybe we'll put Paddy and Illa Topuria at the White House. How about that, right? That is a possibility. That is a possibility. Look, everybody right now wants to be at the White House card so bad, right? Like, do we forget there's also a July card that is called International Fight Week, right? That's also prestigious in and of itself, right? Brandon Royval said that he is not willing to fight at the White House because he said that it reminds him of like a Hunger Games situation where People are fighting in front of billionaires, and these billionaires don't really care about the fighters, nor do they really care about fighting, period. Right? So yeah, I thought that was interesting that he brought that up, right? But again, a different opinion, kind of showing everybody a different ambition because everybody in the UFC right now is literally blowing up Dana White to have themselves put on that card. Sometimes, you know what? Here's the thing, right? I think Illa Topuria is saving himself for the White House card. Is that impossible to believe? Is that impossible to believe, right? And by the time he gets back to the White House to fight there, it'll be a year since he fought. Right now, a year isn't really that much. Guys go through an entire year without fighting. It happens, but it doesn't mean that it's the biggest inactivity ever. But all right, continue on.
Morning, which he wanted to beat the UFC announcement and also give a reason for it. But he says, I won't be fighting in the first quarter of next year. I'm going through a difficult moment in my personal life. I want to focus on my children and resolve this situation as soon as possible. I don't want to hold up the division. The UFC will make the matchups needed. And as soon as the matters are resolved, I'll let the UFC know I'm ready to begin my return. This is almost for certain in reference.
You know what? It's funny that they are not willing to strip Illa Topuria because you know what? Maybe they see something in Illa Topuria, right? Look at what Jiri did, right? Jiri was injured and they're like, hey, listen, you know what? I'm going to drop the belt. And then that's it. I'm going to drop the belt and I'm going to let everybody fight for it. And that's that, right? George St. Pierre beats Michael Bisping. A couple of days later, vacates the belt and even has a press conference behind it, right? Illa Topuria, they're allowing him to deal with these matters and come back when he needs to. Because look, man, it's not like look in boxing, right? Alexander Usyk is the undisputed champion, yeah? But at any given moment, they could take away his belts from him, and the next thing you know, those belts get contested again, right? So it's kind of an interesting competitive architecture to say the least.
To the alleged divorce that Illa Topuria is going through with his wife. Max Holloway, who has divorced himself, says, sorry to hear, champ. If it's what I'm hearing it is, I know the struggle firsthand, trying to fight while protecting your kids. Hope all is well. Illa Topuria says, thanks for the support, brother. All the best for you and your family. Good to see former foes and potential future foes looking out for each other in that regard. Because at the end of the day, all human, all just men trying to figure stuff out and provide for their families. And Topuria could actually be fighting for the custody of his kids because he has like a 1-year-old daughter and like a 5 or a 6-year-old kid. So it's going to get messy for him, especially if, the rumors of him cheating on his wife are true and her being the one with the money before he became UFC champ. It could get really messy as far as assets, custody, all that type of stuff. So it makes sense as to why he's taking a step away from.
All right, look, I'm going to be honest about this, right? Ilya is not beating Islam. There is no way he's beating Islam. This is, listen, man, I'm telling you right now, right? Everything that Andrew Tate and Myron Gaines and all of these things that they talk about, I mean, listen, Illa Topuria is the living example of all those things that they warn you about, right? But nonetheless, the reason why they do bring up these types of things is because understand this, right? All these distractions that he has going on is not going to be conducive to his championship run, let alone fight somebody like Islam Makhachev. Do you honestly think Islam Makhachev has these types of problems outside the cage? No, he doesn't. Okay, there's none of this. There's no ruffle of any feathers. There's none of this. There's no distraction. There's no blockage. There's no none of that, right? So man, he's going to have a very difficult time against Islam Makhachev. You guys already know, the training machine that he is. And then on top of the fact that he trains with the best guys in the world in Team Eagle, and it's not a good recipe for Illa Topuria.
Fighting for the early part of next year to focus up and get that taken care of. But in the meantime, we have Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett as a title fight, an interim title fight. Justin Gaethje got his way. He said, I want a title fight or I'm retiring. And he bitched and moaned his way into an interim title shot against Paddy Pimblett, who may be getting the most undeserved title fight in UFC history. because his wins are Michael Chandler, Bobby Green, and Tony Ferguson, and then before that, losing to Jared Gordon. So Paddy Pimblett, don't get me wrong, I like Paddy.
Okay, I don't think he lost to Jared Gordon, but I understand what Fight Society is saying there. It was as if he lost to Jared Gordon. Now, I understand that, but those wins, yeah, it seems very mediocre on the rise to, the championship, right? I mean, those are not like the type of names that literally catapult you into a championship, a contendership. But nonetheless, he's there anyway. Well, now that they got Justin Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett, what is Justin Gaethje? He's number 4 in the division right now. Okay, and then Paddy Pimblett is number 5. Great, good. He beats him. After he beats him, he's maybe ranked at number 3 or number 4, depending on where number 3 and number 4 are currently at. But on any regard, yeah, let's continue on.
He's super popular. He's a really fun guy to have in such a stacked weight division as well. So I like this fight, but don't get this mistaken. This is the most undeserved title shot of all time in Paddy Pimblett. So we have Justin Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett headlining the card. Then we have the co-main event of Kayla Harrison defending her 135-pound strap against Amanda Nunes, returning from retirement. Massive fight right there. We also have the return of former champion Sean O'Malley going up against Song Yadong. Huge, huge fight that could get O'Malley a trilogy with Ron. We also have Cortez Acosta and Derek Lewis. Massive fight as well. Good main card fight. And we also have a banger in the return of Arnold Allen against the Fighting Nerds star Ian Silva, coming off of his loss to Diego Lopez. And the very next week in UFC 325, we actually have Volkvs.Lopez versus Diego Lopez rematch, which has been talked about it a few times. This is going to be Volk's retirement fight. And this is the main event as well. So that means that Alex Pereira is not going to be on this card. He's not.
Okay, that's a sudden revelation right there. This is going to be Volkanovski's retirement fight. Did I just hear that right? What? That's going to be his retirement fight. Wow. Okay, that's interesting. All right. Well, I suppose so, right? Look, you know what? That's good. That's good. Look, it's a winnable fight. It's a very winnable fight for him, right? And as a winnable fight for him, I think that it's a good way to go out. And you know what? He's going out in a way that he didn't expect, right? He would have never expected it to be against Lopez, right? For the last time. And hey, why not? Why not? I like it, man. Shout outs to him on on that one, right? You know what? I'm hoping he wins. Just based on that alone, right? I hope he wins and he takes it just because of that. But yeah, man, shout outs to Volkanovski.
Going to be on 324. We're probably going to see Pereira at 326. And if not, then Pereira's moving up to heavyweight at the White House. So let's go through these fights and let you know my thoughts on this. We got Gaethje and Pimblett. Massive, massive fight. The winner of this fight, of course, is...
Oh, snap. All right. Hey, my bad. I didn't see any of these comments right here. I'm seeing it in my laptop, but not in my phone. But okay, let me read these comments right here from from the start right here. So, oh wow. Okay, we got some people up in here. Okay, hold on. Let's see here. Oh yeah, LaRon Murphy is also okay. So isn't going back to the shrimp. Do you eat shrimp and Hummer? Okay, Fresh says to become number 1 like Ronaldo, Messi, and Zlatan. Yeah, for sure. More selfish than the average human. Even more selfish than your teammates. Isn't shrimp and crab halal? Yes, it is. Fresh Melon Juice says Movzar have no longer a win streak. How so? Why doesn't he have a win streak? I mean, he didn't lose, right? Same as Shafkat. Okay, Ilya wants to make sure he fights at the White House. Yes. You know what? Listen, yeah, we got to understand that, right? He says, gatekeeper. Yes. Illusion says Dana White is killing the UFC with horrible matchmaking. It lost. Here's something you got to understand, right? That is not Dana White's fault. Okay, these things happen. These things absolutely happen. It's, you know what? It's not to anyone's control. That's the unfortunate reality. It's not to the control of anyone. You know what I mean? They can't control it. It's just, what it is. Uh, Look, Mozart would have been a great fight against Volkanovski. But how can you make that fight if one party is not healthy? Mozart is not healthy to get in there, so they got to go with the next best thing, and that's that. And you know what? Grateful Volkanovski, because now he can go out on top. And let me tell you why this is good that he gets out on top. At least when he retires, he can go on and become an ambassador for the UFC. He gets to go out on top. He gets to have a name, behind him. He gets to work maybe behind the desk or maybe do, PR for the UFC and the Australian and Pacific seaside of things. Fresh says Dana is saving the fights to the White House card. I can see that. Illa says doesn't explain why Lopez is getting another shot after getting dominated and then beating number 11. Because, my man, that is the only person that is available right now. Okay, this is the reason why Dana White asks, are you guys happy? Are you not happy? This is the reason why he says that, because he knows that, he didn't make the best fights here. He knows that, and he only made the fights that were possible. He says, Ilya is on hold because Dana is afraid he might lose. Lopez destroyed fighting nerd guy, and Mobzar is injured, no choice. Ilya's on hold because he's going through a divorce custody battle. Illa says Laurent should have been next. Fresh says, yeah, that's true. Fresh says, forget about him. That's maybe why he didn't get the title fight. Sarah Bunan says, if Ilya fights in the spring, how will he face Islam at the White House so soon? That's a very good question, man. That's why they got to try to figure these things out. The Islam call out is a PR. He's never fighting Islam. He says, yes, exactly. Melanju says he's scared of Armin in his division. Do you think he wants Islam in Islam's division? Illa says Ilya is turning out to be one of the biggest wastes of talent in the sport. Fresh says same as Conor McGregor. He says he left featherweight to fight Islam, and now you're saying he's scared of Armin. Fresh Melanju says he knew Islam was moving up. UFC made it happen. Illa says he's calling out Paddy, LOL, of OFC. He doesn't want to fight Armin. He doesn't want to fight Armin. Islam has been asking to move up for years, and magically he was moved up so Ilya could be champ in the second division. Turtle in a tree. I don't understand what that expression means. It was very less time that Islam is moving up because everyone thought Bilal would beat JDM. Ilya only wants to fight when he knows he's going to win or when he has nothing to lose. I think most fighters can be like that. He says that kid just doesn't want to take the risk. Yeah, he thinks he's Conor, but Conor took every fight the UFC gave him during his run. He says exactly. Conor wasn't fighting once a year and ducking people. He was fighting a welterweight when he was a featherweight. Says, what is Kyrie yapping about? A little bit of everything that deals with this fight. Allah says, yes, that's what I'm thinking. What is bro on about? 13th Assassin, shout out to you. Assalamu alaikum, my brother. He says, is an interim fight going to happen between Justin and Paddy? Yes, that is what is going on right now. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. I think they will keep all options open for the White House card. Not locked in, because if Justin and Paddy fight sucks, they are stuck in a garbage White House fight. Fresh Melanju says he's not done enough. Melanju says Paddy beats with a long losing streak. Paddy beats people with long losing streaks. 13th Assassin says, man, I genuinely feel the UFC is going down. They don't respect the rankings. 13th Assassin says, same goes with Ilya. He's beating folks on their end streak. Okay. So Fresh says, yeah, old people. He's scared of young elite fighters. Islam's greatest problem is catching fish or not. I agree, right? That seems to be the only challenge that he has, right? Is whether he can catch fish or not. And little laughing emoji by 13th Warrior right there. All right, guys. So listen, that is all that I have for this one right now. Don't forget to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I gave you guys all the information dealing with all the fights that are going on right now, all the fights that are announced. We even went over the whole entire card for UFC 323. There's one for UFC 324 and 325. How about that? UFC 324 and 325 are simultaneously in the same month, 1 week back to back. So it couldn't get any better than that, guys. So listen, with that in mind, that is all that I have for this one. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you guys in the next one, inshallah.